The billionaire mocked his ex, still single. He didn't know she was now a single mother and was surprised to learn who the father was. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The January sun beat down on the streets of New York City when Emily Johnson adjusted her navy blue dress for the third time, which she had bought especially for this moment. Her hands trembled slightly as she held Lily, her 3-year-old daughter, who was distractedly playing with a small, worn teddy bear. The Ritz-Carlton loomed before them like a golden temple, its imposing columns reflecting the intense light dancing over the choppy waters of the harbor. "Mommy, why are we here?" Lily asked with her crystal-clear voice, her green eyes shining with curiosity as she observed the elegant movement of guests entering and exiting the lobby. Emily swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the 4 years that had passed since she last set foot in that place. Not as a guest, never, but as an invisible employee, cleaning the ballrooms while the wealthy enjoyed their imported morning coffees. "We have an important appointment, Princess. Mommy needs you to be a good girl." "Okay." Emily gently kissed her daughter's forehead, inhaling the sweet scent of children's shampoo that always calmed her in moments of tension. The main ballroom of the hotel was exactly as she remembered. Crystal chandeliers hung majestically from the ornate ceiling, casting golden reflections on the polished marble floor. The intense aroma of American coffee mingled with notes of roses coming from the floral arrangements strategically placed between the mahogany tables. Executives in impeccable suits gestured over million-dollar contracts, while New York socialites discussed their upcoming trips to Paris between sips of French champagne. Emily walked slowly, each step calculated to demonstrate the confidence she had fought hard to gain over the past years. Her brown hair, now cut in a modern style that framed her face perfectly, swayed gently as she moved. The invisible scars of those years of humiliation still pulsed in her memory, but she had learned to transform pain into fuel for her unwavering determination. It was then that she saw him. Across the ballroom, near the panoramic windows that offered a privileged view of the harbor, there he was, Daniel Thompson, heir to one of the oldest fortunes in the country, CEO of Thompson Construction. The company that had built half of the skyscrapers dominating the New York skyline. His black hair was perfectly slicked back, revealing a high, aristocratic forehead. The dark grey tailored suit hugged his athletic body perfectly, while his long, precise fingers glided over the screen of the tablet where he was reviewing documents that were surely worth millions. Emily stopped abruptly when his eyes lifted from the electronic device and met hers for the first time in 4 years. Green eyes, deep as raw emeralds, exactly like Lily's. The same almond shape, the same penetrating intensity, the same perfectly arched eyebrows. The resemblance was impossible to ignore, a genetic mirror that screamed truths, silenced by time and hurt. Daniel slowly rose from the leather armchair where he had been seated, his imposing height of 6 feet 1 inch, causing other patrons to unconsciously step back, creating a respectful space around him. His lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes, an expression Emily recognized well from the times he treated her like invisible furniture in his mansion on the Upper East Side. Emily Johnson, he pronounced her name, or rather, her old name, as if savoring each syllable with calculated disdain. Still single? The question echoed through the refined atmosphere, laden with all the sarcasm and superiority she knew well. Other patrons discreetly turned their heads, sensing the electric tension beginning to form between them. Lily, noticing the change in her mother's breathing, clung more tightly to Emily's neck, her little green eyes curiously observing the elegant man who was staring at them with an indefinable expression. "It's Johnson now," Emily replied firmly, slightly lifting her chin in a gesture of earned dignity. "Emily Johnson, CEO of Green Clean Solutions." Daniel raised an impeccably groomed eyebrow, genuinely surprised. The woman standing before him was no longer the shy 22-year-old who used to lower her eyes whenever he walked past the hallways of his home. This Emily wore a dress that, although understated, was clearly expensive and well-tailored. Her shoulders were erect with natural confidence, and there was something in her brown eyes, a steely determination he didn't remember seeing before. "CEO," he repeated, letting out a low laugh that sounded more like a disbelieving bark. "Of cleaning, I imagine. At least you stayed in the same area of expertise." Emily felt her blood boil in her veins, but maintained a serene expression. She had learned through years of struggle and overcoming that the best revenge against arrogance was silent success. Her eco-cleaning company serviced half of the most important commercial buildings in New York City, employed over 200 staff, and had annual revenue that rivaled century-old family businesses. "Yes, cleaning," she confirmed with a smile that revealed nothing but professional politeness. "Specifically, we clean up the mess that others leave behind, including some construction companies that don't adequately meet their environmental commitments." The jab hit its mark. Daniel was well aware of the problems. His company had recently faced with environmental and labor issues. Major investors had pulled out, stock prices had plummeted, and rumors of questionable practices circulated through the business corridors of Wall Street like poisonous whispers. Lily chose that moment to shift in her mother's arms, drawing Daniel's attention to the child for the first time. His eyes widened involuntarily as he noticed the disturbing resemblance. The girl not only had his green eyes, but also the same dimple in her chin, the lineage that marked the Thompsons for generations, the same slightly upturned nose, the same high and intelligent forehead. "How old is she?" The question escaped his lips before he could control himself, his voice sounding strangely hoarse. Emily hugged Lily more tightly, instinctively protecting her daughter from the penetrating gaze of that man. 3 years old, turning 4 in November. The mathematical calculations formed automatically in Daniel's mind. 3 years meant conception between January and February of 2021. He vaguely remembered that period. It had been a particularly stressful time in his personal life, with the turbulent breakup of an arranged engagement and some impulsive decisions he preferred not to recall in detail. "And the father?" he asked, his voice now laden with a tension he couldn't completely disguise. Emily looked directly into his eyes, allowing a significant silence to stretch between them before responding. "Irrelevant. Lily and I managed just fine on our own." The categorical response left Daniel momentarily speechless. He was used to having all the information he wanted with a simple command to his assistants, but something in this woman's posture suggested she wouldn't be easily intimidated or manipulated. The Emily he had known years ago would never have directed such a direct and challenging look at him. Lily, tired of the inexplicable tension between the adults, began to fidget in her mother's arms. "Mommy, can I have some juice?" "Of course, Princess. Let's find our table." Emily prepared to move away, but Daniel stepped in her direction, discreetly blocking her path. "Emily, Perhaps we could talk. About business, of course. My company has some cleaning contracts that—" "My assistant evaluates all business proposals," Emily interrupted with professional coldness. "If your company meets our sustainability and social responsibility criteria, it will certainly be considered like any other." The humiliation of the role reversal hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. The woman he had dismissed for incompetence now had the power to accept or reject his business. The world had turned upside down, and he didn't quite know how to handle this new reality. Emily began to walk away, but stopped and looked over her shoulder. "By the way, Daniel, still with that same arrogance?" And with that question, laden with irony, she majestically headed to her reserved table, leaving behind a confused billionaire and a multitude of unanswered questions that would haunt him for the coming months. The jacarandas in New York City were beginning to bloom in vibrant purple hues when Emily received the call that would change the course of the next few months. It was a Tuesday morning, and she was in her office on the 22nd floor of a commercial building on Fifth Avenue, reviewing financial reports that confirmed the exponential growth of green, clean solutions. Through the panoramic windows, she could observe the frenetic ballet of cars navigating the morning traffic, while the golden February sun painted the metropolis with warm and promising tones. "Miss Emily?" The familiar voice of Grace, the former housekeeper of the Thompson mansion, sounded fragile and hesitant on the other end of the line. "I hope I'm not bothering you, but I needed to talk to you about something important." Emily pushed her reading glasses aside and leaned back in her brown leather ergonomic chair. Grace had worked for the Thompson family for over 20 years, a 60-year-old Bolivian woman with graying hair, always neatly tied in a bun, and calloused hands that bore witness to decades of silent dedication. During the 2 years Emily worked in the mansion, Grace had been her only ally, offering maternal advice and discreet protection against the inappropriate advances some men in the family occasionally made towards the younger staff. "Of course, you're not bothering me, Grace. How are you? And how's the family?" "We're well, thank God. My granddaughter got accepted to NYU to study medicine. Can you believe it?" The pride in the woman's voice was palpable, but quickly turned to concern. "But that's not what I wanted to talk about. It's about Mr. Daniel." Emily felt her stomach involuntarily tighten at the mention of his name. Since their encounter at the Ritz-Carlton 3 weeks ago, she had managed to keep Daniel Thompson out of her thoughts through sheer discipline and hard work. Her company was negotiating important contracts with international hotel chains, and there was no time for inconvenient memories. "What about him, Grace?" "He's in bad shape, dear. The company is bankrupt. Really bankrupt." The housekeeper lowered her voice as if fearing to be overheard, even though she was calling from her own home in Brooklyn. "All the investors left after that scandal with the construction workers in Morumbi. You know how it is. They weren't paying properly, there was no safety equipment, there was even a death." Emily closed her eyes, mentally visualizing the headlines she had seen in the newspapers a few months back. A 32-year-old worker had fallen from a poorly structured scaffold at a luxury condominium site, leaving behind a wife and 2 small children. The investigation revealed a series of irregularities that led to the suspension of the company's license and the withdrawal of several major investors. "Go on, Grace." "Mrs. Thompson, the matriarch, is desperate. She's wandering the halls of the mansion crying, saying the family is going to lose everything. The banks are calling in loans. Employees are being laid off. It's very sad to see, dear. Very sad indeed." Emily stood up and walked to the window, observing the city's movement below. A part of her, the part that still carried the scars of humiliation, whispered that he deserved all of this. Daniel Thompson had treated people like her as disposable throughout his life, using his privileged position to destroy dreams and dignities without ever considering the consequences. The irony of the situation was almost poetic. The man who was born with everything was now facing the possibility of losing exactly what he had always considered his birthright. "Why is he? Why are you telling me this, Grace?" "Because..." The housekeeper hesitated, as if struggling with her own feelings. "Because I saw you two at the hotel last month. I saw the girl. Oh my God, Emily. She has his eyes. She has his chin. She has everything of his." The silence stretched between them like an unspoken confession. Emily had confided in Grace during her pregnancy, when she still lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn and worked as a housekeeper to survive. Grace had been the only person who knew the truth from the beginning, offering emotional support and even financial help when necessary. "Grace, you don't need to say anything, dear. I know you have your reasons for not speaking up. I know he wasn't kind to you when he found out you were pregnant, but now," she sighed deeply, "now maybe it's different. He's humbled. He's broken. Maybe it's time for what? To chase after a man who treated me like trash, who fired me when I needed stability the most." The old anger bubbled in Emily's voice, surprising her with its intensity. "Lily and I have built a beautiful life without him. We don't need anything he can offer. But the girl needs a dad, Emily, and he needs to. No, he has a daughter. That's not fair to either of them." After ending the call, Emily stood by the window for long minutes, lost in memories she preferred to keep buried. She remembered the night everything changed, a New Year's party at the Thompson mansion, when she had stayed late to clean up the aftermath of the celebration. Daniel was drunk, vulnerable after a violent argument with his fiancée about the arranged marriage by his family. One thing led to another, and what should have been just a night of mutual comfort turned into the origin of Lily. When she discovered the pregnancy 2 months later, Emily had gathered the courage to tell the truth. Daniel's reaction was exactly what she had feared: furious denial, accusations of a gold digger, and finally a summary dismissal accompanied by legal threats if she tried to defame the Thompson family with lies about paternity. "Mum?" Lily appeared at the office door, interrupting her dark thoughts. The girl was wearing her school uniform, a pristine white blouse and a navy blue skirt, and carrying her small backpack decorated with unicorn drawings. At 3 years old, Lily already displayed a precocious intelligence that made Emily proud and worried in equal measure. "Hi, Princess. Did you finish class?" "Aunt Claudia brought Lily here because she had to sort out some things with the school," explained Claudia, Emily's personal assistant, appearing behind the child. "I hope you don't mind. She said she wanted to see Mommy." Emily opened her arms and Lily ran into them as she always did. The familiar scent of crayons and children's shampoo flooded her senses, providing the comfort she always found in her daughter's embrace. "Mommy, why are you sad?" Lily asked with the keen perception of children, gently touching Emily's face with her small hands. "I'm not sad, sweetheart, just thoughtful." "Thoughtful about what?" Emily looked into her daughter's green eyes, so similar to Daniel's that it sometimes hurt physically, and felt the familiar weight of the responsibility she had carried alone for over 3 years. Lily deserved to know her complete story, but she also deserved to be protected from the cruelty and rejection the world could offer her. "About you growing up so fast," Emily replied diplomatically, kissing her daughter's forehead, "and about how you're becoming a smart and brave girl. Just like you, Mummy. I hope much better than me, Princess." In that moment, while embracing Lily in her office overlooking New York City, Emily made a decision that would change the course of their lives forever. She would not seek out Daniel Thompson because of his financial crisis. She would never be seen as an opportunist. But if fate conspired to bring them together again, this time she would be prepared for all the consequences. What Emily didn't know was that, at that very moment, 15 kilometers away, Daniel was sitting in his own office, now much smaller and more modest than his former empire, looking at a photo that his doctor brother had discreetly taken at the hospital, an image of Lily smiling, revealing a dimple in her chin that was unmistakably Thompson. Fate, it seemed, was already weaving its invisible threads. Continue 1854, Chapter 3. The playground in Central Park was alive on a sunny March afternoon. The century-old trees cast dancing shadows over the colorful playground equipment, while the joyful sounds of children playing mingled with the relaxed conversations of parents enjoying the weekend. Emily watched Lily climb up and down the slide with the boundless energy typical of her age, her brown hair swaying in the wind as she laughed with pure joy. "Mommy, look how brave I am!" Lily shouted from the top of the slide, her green eyes shining with pride before she launched herself down the slide for the 10th time in a row. Emily smiled, feeling a rare peace flooding her chest. Moments like these, simple, everyday yet profoundly significant, were her greatest treasure. After years of struggling to build a decent life for the two of them, she could finally provide her daughter with the carefree childhood she herself had never had. "Very brave, Princess, but be careful not to get hurt." The words died in her throat when Lily, in her excitement, lost her balance at the top of the slide and fell awkwardly, her knee hitting hard against the metal edge of the playground equipment. The cry that followed was different from the usual dramatic wails of a frustrated child. It was a sharp sound of real pain that made Emily run like she had never run in her life. Lily was sitting on the ground, holding her right knee with tears streamed down, the little girl's face contorting in pain. "Oh, Mommy, it hurts so much! It hurts so much!" The girl's voice was choked with sobs, and Emily could immediately see that it was more than just a superficial scrape. The knee was swelling rapidly, and a dark bruise was beginning to form under her delicate skin. "Calm down, sweetheart. Mommy is here. We're going to take care of you right now." Emily carefully picked Lily up, feeling the child tremble in pain in her arms. Her heart raced as she realized that Lily couldn't bend her leg without screaming. New York. Presbyterian Hospital was only 10 minutes from the playground, but the Uber ride felt like an eternity. Emily held her daughter close, murmuring comforting words as Lily alternated between cries of pain and brave attempts to stop crying so as not to worry her mother. "Everything will be all right, Princess. You're the strongest girl I know, remember?" The pediatric emergency room at the hospital was a carefully designed environment to soothe frightened children. The walls were decorated with colorful drawings of smiling animals, and soft instrumental music played over the sound system. Even so, Lily clung even more tightly to Emily's neck when they were called for their appointment. "Lily Johnson." A deep, professional male voice echoed through the waiting room. Emily stood up, carrying her daughter, and walked toward the voice. What she saw made her stop abruptly, as if she had bumped into an invisible wall. The doctor, waiting for them at the office entrance, was unmistakably a Thompson. He had the same imposing height, the same dark hair, and above all, the same piercing green eyes that she knew so well. "Dr. Thompson?" Emily read the name on the white coat, her voice sounding more fragile than she intended. "Dr. Lucas Thompson," he confirmed with a gentle smile, extending his hand in greeting, "and you must be Lily's mother. Please come in." Lucas Thompson was 5 years younger than Daniel, but carried the same natural elegance of the family. At 32, he had deliberately chosen a different path from his brothers, rejecting the family business to pursue medicine, specializing in pediatrics out of a genuine passion for caring for children. His hair was slightly longer than Daniel's, falling messily over his high forehead, and there was a natural kindness in his eyes that contrasted with the calculated arrogance of his older brother. "So what happened to our patient?" Lucas knelt down to Lily's level, addressing her directly with the kind of respect that children rarely receive from adults. "Can you tell me how you got hurt?" Lily, still nestled in Emily's arms, looked shyly at the doctor. Even through the pain, she sensed something familiar in those green eyes, though she didn't quite know what it was. "I fell off the slide," she murmured, her voice still choked with sobs. "And now my knee hurts a lot." "How brave you are to tell me everything. Now I'm going to examine that knee to see how I can help you feel better, all right?" The examination was conducted with impressive gentleness. Lucas constantly chatted with Lily, distracting her with questions about her favorite drawings and toys, while carefully palpating the injured knee. Emily watched every movement, noting how he had the same precise way of moving his hands as Daniel, but with a kindness she had never seen in her older brother. "Well, I have good news and bad news," Lucas finally said, addressing both Lily and Emily. "The bad news is that you've sprained your knee and will need to wear a bandage for a few days. The good news is that you didn't break anything, so you'll be better in no time." As he applied the bandage, Lucas couldn't help but notice details that made him pause imperceptibly in his work. The dimple in Lily's chin was identical to the one he himself had, which marked all the Thompson men for at least 4 generations. The shape of her eyes, the line of her brow, even the way the girl furrowed her brow when concentrating, all echoed unmistakable family traits. "Can I ask how old Lily is?" Lucas casually inquired, while finishing adjusting the bandage. 3 years old. She turned in November," Emily replied, unaware of the impact this information would have on the doctor. Lucas quickly did the mental math. 3 years old, born in November, meant conception around February 2021. He vaguely remembered that period. Daniel was going through a serious personal crisis, having broken off his engagement and drinking more than usual. There were also whispered rumors among the mansion staff about inappropriate situations involving the older brother, rumors that the family always swept under the rug. "And her father?" Lucas asked, trying to maintain a professional tone. Despite the growing suspicion forming in his mind, Emily hesitated for a moment, the same kind of hesitation Lucas had learned to recognize in families that held painful secrets. "He's not present in her life." "I see." Lucas finished applying the bandage and stepped back, observing Lily with clinical eyes that now saw much more than just a patient. "Lily, you are very brave. This bandage is magical. It will make your knee heal super fast, but only if you promise not to run around too much for the next 3 days. Can you promise?" "I promise, doctor. Thank you for taking care of me." Lily smiled, and for the first time since the accident, her face lit up with the natural joy of childhood. "You're welcome, little one. Now I'm going to talk to your mommy for a minute about your care, all right?" Lucas turned to Emily, handing her a prescription and detailed instructions for knee care. But his eyes couldn't completely divert from Lily, as if he were trying to solve a complex puzzle whose pieces were fitting together. Disturbing. "If there are any complications, anything at all, bring her back immediately. Pediatrics is my specialty, and—" He paused. "Significantly, Lily is clearly a very special girl." Emily thanked him politely and prepared to leave, but Mark's voice stopped her at the door. "Emily, may I ask, have you ever worked for any family here in New York City? I know it's a strange question, but you seem familiar." Emily's blood ran cold. For a moment, she considered lying, but something in the doctor's honest expression made her opt for a partial truth. "I worked as a housekeeper for a few years, yes. Several different families." Mark nodded slowly, but his keen eyes caught the evasiveness in her response. "If you need anything, my card has my personal cell number. Don't hesitate to call." As Emily and Lily left the office, Mark stood still for long minutes, holding the medical record and contemplating the implications of what he had just discovered. As a doctor, he had an ethical obligation to maintain confidentiality about his patients. As a brother, he had a familial responsibility to investigate suspicions that could profoundly impact the lives of everyone involved. That night, alone in his modest apartment in Chelsea, Daniel Thompson made a decision that would change the course of several lives. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "New York Lab? I would like to request a paternity test, urgent and confidential." Across the city, Emily was tucking Lily into bed, humming a lullaby as the little girl fought against sleep. She had no idea that on that very night, for the first time in 4 years, a Thompson was discovering the truth about his daughter's paternity. Fate, once again, had decided to accelerate its plans. The St. Joseph's Festival in Chinatown was buzzing with life when Emily arrived with Lily on a sunny March morning. The streets were closed to traffic, transformed into a colorful maze of stalls, showcasing everything from traditional Japanese lanterns to American crafts. The tempting aroma of Asian food mingled with the familiar scent of fried chicken croquettes and donuts, creating an olfactory symphony that sparked nostalgic smiles among visitors. "Mummy, can I have yakisoba?" Lily asked, excitedly pointing to a stall where a skilled chef was tossing noodles on a giant griddle, his hands dancing in precise movements that mesmerized the children in line. "Of course, Princess. But first, let's watch the traditional dance performance, okay?" Emily adjusted the strap of her brown leather bag, discreetly checking that all the company documents were organized. As the invited businesswoman for the event, she would need to mingle among the promotional booths, greet other entrepreneurs, and adequately represent Green Clean Solutions. Emily wore a navy blue midi dress with white lace details at the cuffs, an elegant piece yet suitable for an outdoor event. Her hair was styled in a low, relaxed bun with a few loose strands framing her face. On her feet, she wore low-heeled nude leather shoes, practical enough for walking on the cobblestone streets of Chinatown, yet stylish enough for the photos that would surely be taken for the local press. Lily, for her part, looked adorable in her yellow dress with sunflower prints, a blue headband in her brown hair, and white ballet flats that already showed signs of the adventure from the previous week's playground visit. The bandage on her knee had been replaced with a colorful band-aid that she proudly displayed, telling anyone who would listen about the nice doctor who took care of my boo-boo. The two walked among the stalls when Emily spotted the main booth of the City Hall, where she was supposed to sign the partnership agreement for the sustainable cleaning project for the city's public events. It was an important contract, not only for its financial value, but for the official recognition it would bring to her company. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Johnson." The city's environmental secretary, a bald man in his 50s with a perpetually political smile, waved enthusiastically. "What an honor to have you with us today. And this must be the famous Lily we've heard so much about." Emily smiled politely, accustomed to how people tried to create intimacy through her daughter. Lily, always polite, greeted the secretary with a whispered, "Good afternoon," before hiding behind her mother's legs. It was during the official contract signing ceremony that Emily felt a familiar presence behind her. It was as if a sixth sense alerted her to known gazes, a feeling that made her instinctively turn her head in the wrong direction towards the small stage set up for the authorities. Daniel Thompson was there, standing just 5 meters away, but he looked like a completely different man from the arrogant billionaire she had encountered at the Ritz-Carlton. His dark hair was slightly tousled by the wind, and he wore a dark blue polo shirt and beige chinos, casual clothes, yet still of evident quality. More striking was his expression. There was no sign of his usual superiority, only a strange mix of curiosity and something that could be interpreted as vulnerability. He was alone. Without the usual armor of bodyguards, assistants, and sycophants that typically surrounded him like a protective entourage. Without the tailored suit that always served as a silent declaration of financial supremacy. Just a 37-year-old man observing a woman and a child with an intensity he couldn't quite explain. Lily noticed the stranger's fixed gaze and waved shyly, as she usually did with adults who seemed friendly. Daniel looked visibly surprised by the spontaneous gesture, his eyebrows raising slightly before he returned the wave with an almost adolescent hesitation. "Mummy, that man is looking at us," Lily whispered, discreetly tugging at the hem of Emily's dress. Emily finished signing the documents and headed towards Daniel, deciding it would be better to face the situation head-on than to let it linger. He continued to watch them from a distance. Lily held her mother's hand tightly, walking alongside her with the natural curiosity of children. "Daniel!" Emily greeted him with a formal nod. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Emily," he replied, his voice sounding different, less commanding, more human. I have some business in the area and heard about the event. I thought I'd take a look." The lie was transparent, but Emily decided not to question it. There was something in his posture that suggested hidden fragility, as if he were trying to maintain a facade that no longer held up as easily as before. "And you, Lily?" Daniel knelt down to the girl's level, addressing her directly for the first time. "Are you having fun at the party?" Lily studied his face with the seriousness of a little investigator. "You have eyes just like mine," she observed with the brutal honesty of children. "Why?" The innocent question hit Daniel like a bolt of lightning. He quickly glanced at Emily, who maintained a carefully neutral expression, then turned his gaze back to Lily. The resemblance was impossible to deny when observed up close. Not just the green eyes, but the way the girl tilted her head when she thought, the same unconscious gesture he himself made. "Some people are born with similar eyes," Daniel replied carefully, his voice slightly hoarse. "It's an interesting coincidence, isn't it? My teacher says a coincidence is when two similar things happen without anyone planning it," Lily explained with the precocious wisdom that always surprised adults. "But Mommy says sometimes things happen for a special reason that we only understand later." Emily felt her face flush. The life philosophy she had tried to teach her daughter to cope with the absence of her father now sounded like an awkward prophecy. "Your mommy is very wise," Daniel commented, lifting his eyes to Emily with an indefinable expression. "She always has been." The sound of itaiko, traditional Japanese drums, echoed through the square, announcing the start of a cultural performance. Lily turned excitedly toward the music but continued to hold Emily's hand like an anchor of safety. "Can I watch, Mummy? Please?" "Of course, Princess. Let's get closer to the stage." Daniel hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Can I join you? I mean, if it's not a bother. I'd like to see the performance too." Emily quickly assessed the request. There was something in the way he had addressed Lily, with genuine respect, without the typical condescension of adults who didn't know how to talk to children, that made her agree against her better judgment. "Sure, just don't forget that Lily is a curious child. She might ask some awkward questions." "Like everyone her age, I imagine," Daniel replied with something that almost resembled a genuine smile. The three moved closer to the stage, where dancers in colorful kimonos performed graceful movements to the hypnotic sound of the drums. Lily was fascinated, clapping along to the rhythm of the music and trying to imitate the delicate steps of the dancers. "She has a knack for dancing," Daniel observed, watching the coordinated movements of the girl. "She takes ballet." "Classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays," Emily replied automatically, then wondered why she was sharing personal information with him. "And you? Are you still dancing?" Emily looked surprised at Daniel. During the years she worked at the Thompson mansion, one of the few things they had discovered in common was their love for dance. She had studied classical ballet during her teenage years, a passion she had to abandon when her family faced financial difficulties. Daniel, on the other hand, had learned ballroom dancing as part of his aristocratic upbringing, but had discovered that he genuinely enjoyed the elegant ritual of coordinated steps. "I rarely have time for it," she replied honestly. "And you?" "Me neither." He paused, watching Lily awkwardly spin as she tried to copy a pirouette. "Maybe we should. Make time, I mean." It wasn't a direct invitation, but there was something in the way he said it that made Emily's heart involuntarily race. She remembered a specific night, years ago, when he had found her dancing alone in the living room of the mansion, thinking everyone was asleep. Instead of reprimanding her for using the space without permission, he had watched in silence before joining her in an improvised waltz that lasted only a few minutes, but had created a dangerous intimacy between them. "Daniel," Emily began, deciding to address the elephant in the room directly, "why are you really here today?" He took a moment to respond, watching Lily, who was now animatedly chatting with other children also watching the performance. "Honestly, I don't know. After that day at the hotel, I can't stop thinking about you, about both of you, and it doesn't make sense because—" He hesitated, struggling with words he wasn't used to saying. "Because I've always been an idiot with you. An arrogant and cruel idiot." The unexpected confession left Emily momentarily speechless. In 4 years of imagining a possible reunion, she had never anticipated he would be capable of such direct self-criticism. "Why does this bother you now?" she asked softly. "Maybe because I finally understood that being rich didn't make me a better person. Maybe because—" He looked again at Lily. "Maybe because some things are too important to be ignored forever." Before Emily could respond, Lily ran back to them, breathless and smiling. "Mommy, the Japanese girls taught me how to bow. Look!" She demonstrated a perfect bow, curtsying gracefully as she had seen the dancers do. "Very beautiful, Princess," Emily applauded, but noticed that Daniel was watching every movement of Lily with an almost painful intensity. "Lily," Daniel said softly, "could you teach me too? It looks like you learned it just right." The simple request made Lily beam with pride. For the next 15 minutes, she took on the role of teacher, patiently showing Daniel how to perform the traditional Japanese bow, correcting his posture and laughing when he deliberately exaggerated his movements. Emily exaggerated her movements to make Lily laugh. Emily watched the interaction with conflicting feelings. Seeing Daniel interact so naturally with Lily stirred something in her chest that she couldn't quite name. A mix of tenderness, fear, and an inexplicable longing for how things could have been different. As the party began to disperse in the late afternoon, Daniel turned to Emily with a serious expression. "Emily, I would you and Lily like to have dinner with me someday? Nothing formal, just to talk. There are many things we need to discuss." Emily looked at Lily, who was distractedly trying to sniff out a chicken skewer, then back at Daniel. "Maybe," she replied cautiously, "but if we do this, it will be under clear conditions. Lily cannot get hurt in the process." "I would never hurt her," Daniel said with a conviction that surprised her. "Not her, nor you. Not again." When they said goodbye that afternoon, Emily knew she had crossed an invisible threshold. The man she had met today was different from the arrogant billionaire who had humiliated her years ago. But was the change deep enough to sustain the truth she had carried alone for so long? Only time would tell. The first rains of April arrived with dramatic intensity, transforming New York City into a blurred watercolor of neon lights reflected on the wet asphalt. Emily was in her office reviewing contracts when Sarah rushed in, carrying a red folder that was only used for corporate emergencies. "Emily, we have a serious problem," Sarah announced, closing the door behind her with more force than necessary. "I just received a call from the IRS. They are opening a full tax investigation on the company." Emily felt her stomach drop. She stood up from her ergonomic chair and walked to the panoramic window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass like silver tears. Down below, traffic on Wall Street crawled in a jam that perfectly mirrored the knot forming in her throat. "What's the stated reason?" Emily asked, keeping her voice steady despite the storm beginning to brew in her chest. "Asset growth inconsistent with the declared income in the early years of the company. They want a complete audit of the last 5 years, all accounts, all contracts, all bank transactions." Sarah placed the folder on the table with a dull thud that echoed through the room like a hammer striking. This could paralyze our operations for months, Emily. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of injustice that seemed to haunt people like her. Women who dared to rise from poverty through their own efforts. She knew exactly who was behind that investigation. In recent months, 3 competitors had lost significant contracts to Green Clean Solutions. Traditional business owners did not usually accept being surpassed by a former housekeeper. "Our books are impeccable," Emily said, more to herself than to Sarah. "Every penny has been declared correctly. Every employee is registered. Every fee has been paid on time. I know that. You know that, but they will question every deposit, every initial investment. They will want to know where the money came from to start the company, how you got the first contracts." Sarah hesitated, as if she were treading on thin ice. "Emily, you never really told me how you got the initial capital to start Green Clean. If they ask—" Emily turned abruptly, her brown eyes shining with a steely determination that Sarah knew well. "The money came from legitimate savings from my years as a house cleaner and a loan from a community bank that I paid back religiously. I have all the documents, all the receipts, every invoice. My financial life is an open book because I always knew that one day they would try to take me down, just like this." The rain intensified outside, creating a rhythmic sound against the windows that served as a soundtrack to the drama unfolding in the office. Emily sat back down, picked up the phone, and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Dr. Michael, it's Emily Johnson. I need an urgent meeting. We have a war to fight." Dr. Michael Anderson was the best tax attorney in New York City, a 60-year-old black man who had built his career defending business owners unjustly targeted by tax investigations, motivated by prejudice and envy. His reputation was legendary. They said he could find legal loopholes in seemingly impenetrable regulations and turn persecutions into resounding victories. While waiting for the lawyer to arrive, Emily received a call that made her freeze completely. "Hello, Mom?" Lily's voice sounded tearful on the other end of the line. It was the director of the private school where Lily studied, an elite institution in the Upper East Side that Emily had carefully chosen to ensure her daughter had the best educational opportunities. "Mrs. Johnson, I need to speak with you urgently. Could you come to the school right now?" "Is something wrong with Lily? Is she okay?" "She is physically fine, but there was an incident. Some mothers made inappropriate comments about your family. Lily overheard and was very upset." Emily felt the anger boil in her veins like molten lava. "What kind of comments?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come pick her up early today?" 20 minutes later, Emily was in the director's office, a 50-year-old blonde woman with a professor-like demeanor and a visibly uncomfortable expression. Lily was sitting in a small chair next to the table, her green eyes swollen from crying. "Mom!" Lily ran into Emily's arms as soon as she saw her. "Why did Isabella's mom say you are a bad person?" Emily hugged her daughter tightly, feeling her whole world crumble and rebuild simultaneously around that innocent question. Over Lily's head, she looked questioningly at the director. Some mothers were commenting about the tax investigation. "News spreads quickly in this social circle," the director explained, with evident embarrassment. "There were comments about people who don't know and their place and consequences of trying to climb the social ladder too quickly." Lily was playing nearby and overheard part of the conversation. "And what did you do about it?" Emily asked, her voice laced with a dangerous coldness. "We reprimanded the mothers involved and explained to Lily that sometimes adults say things out of anger that aren't true." "That's not enough," Emily interrupted. My daughter shouldn't be exposed to that kind of prejudice in an institution that I pay to educate her, not to humiliate her. Lily slightly pulled away from her mother's arms and looked directly at the principal with an impressive seriousness for her 3 years. My mum works really hard to take care of me. She has a big company and helps other people find jobs. Why is that bad? The question came loaded with an innocence that made Emily's heart break and swell with pride simultaneously. On the way home, sitting in the back seat of the car while Emily drove through the wet streets of the city, Lily asked the question Emily feared the most. "Mom, where is my dad? Why don't I have a dad like the other girls?" Emily pulled the car over to the side of the road, turned off the engine, and turned to look directly at her daughter. It was the first time Lily had asked that question so directly, and Emily knew she could no longer postpone a conversation she had been avoiding for years. "Princess, your dad, it's complicated. Sometimes adults make decisions that hurt other people, even if they don't mean to. Your dad made one of those decisions before you were born." "He didn't want me?" Lily asked with the brutal honesty of children. "He didn't know you existed, sweetheart, and when he found out, he wasn't ready to be a good dad. So Mum decided that the two of us were enough to be a complete family." Lily processed the information in silence for a few minutes, looking out the window at the raindrops creating hypnotic patterns on the glass. And now, is he still not ready? The question hit Emily like a lightning bolt. How to explain to a 3-year-old the complexity of a situation she herself was still trying to understand? How to say that maybe her father was changing, but that change was no guarantee he would be able to take on responsibilities he had rejected years ago. "I don't know, Princess. Sometimes people change, sometimes they don't. But one thing I can promise. No matter what happens with your dad, you will always have a mom who loves you more than anything in the world." That night, after putting Lily to bed, which took longer than usual because the girl was visibly shaken by the day's events, Emily sat in her living room with a glass of red wine and a stack of legal documents she needed to review for the tax investigation. Her cell phone rang at 10:15 that night. The number on the screen made her hesitate before answering. "Hello? Emily? It's Daniel. I hope I'm not bothering you." "It's fine. What is it?" "I heard about the tax investigation. I wanted to say that if you need anything at all, you can count on me. I know how this kind of harassment works." Emily was surprised by the offer. "Why would you help me?" Daniel took a moment to respond, and when he spoke, his voice sounded different, more vulnerable, more real. "Because I know it's unfair, because you don't deserve to go through this, and because—" He paused for a long time. "Because I'm tired of being on the wrong side of important things." "Daniel, you don't have to answer now. I just wanted you to know that you're not alone." "And Emily, was Lily okay today? She seemed a bit sad when I saw her leaving school." The question revealed something that made Emily's heart race. "You were at her school." "I was passing through the area and saw her leaving." She looked upset. Emily realized that Daniel had lied. No one passed by Lily's school by chance. He had gone there deliberately, perhaps to see them, perhaps just to make sure they were okay. She had a tough day. Some kids, some mums said unpleasant things about our situation. What kind of things? The anger in Daniel's voice was palpable. The usual kind, prejudice disguised as morality. "Emily, if you want, I can talk to the school administration. My family has influence in that social circle. I can make sure this doesn't happen again." It was a tempting offer, but Emily knew that accepting it would be admitting a vulnerability she had vowed never to feel again. "Thank you, but I can handle this on my own. I've always managed." "I know you can. You're the strongest person I know. But sometimes we don't have to carry everything alone." After ending the call, Emily stayed up late, looking out the window of her apartment at the city lights that twinkled like urban stars. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and full of possibilities. For the first time in 4 years, she wondered if she really needed to face all the battles alone. And for the first time, she considered the possibility that Daniel Thompson might have really changed. But change, she knew from her own experience, was a long and painful process, and she was not willing to gamble Lily's well-being on promises that had yet to be tested by time. The war was just beginning. The sky in New York City dawned heavy with grey clouds, promising more storms, when Emily received the call that would completely change her perspective on recent events. It was a Thursday in May, and she had been at the office since 6 in the morning, preparing documents for the defense against the tax investigation, when her personal phone rang. "Emily, it's Dr. Mark Thompson. I know it's early, but we need to talk urgently about Lily." The doctor's voice sounded tense, laden with the gravity of the situation made Emily drop the pen she was holding. Since the appointment at the hospital, she had avoided thinking too much about the obvious resemblance between Lily and the Thompson family. But Mark's tone suggested that the issue had taken on proportions she hadn't anticipated. "Did something happen? Is she okay?" "Lily is perfectly healthy, but I need to talk to you about other matters, delicate matters. Can you come to the hospital today, preferably without Lily?" Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Mark, you're scaring me. What is it about?" "I'd rather talk in person. Emily, do you trust me as a doctor?" "Yes, of course." "Then trust me when I say this is important, very important." 2 hours later, Emily was sitting in Mark Thompson's office, watching him carefully close the door and lower the blinds on the windows facing the hospital corridor. The environment, which had seemed welcoming during Lily's appointment, now felt laden with dangerous secrets. Mark sat behind his desk, but he couldn't. "Stay still." He stood up almost immediately and began pacing back and forth, running his hands through his dark hair in a gesture that Emily recognized as characteristically Thompson. "Mark, you're making me nervous. What is it?" He stopped in front of her, took a brown envelope from his drawer, and placed it on the table between them. The envelope was sealed and had a lab stamp that Emily couldn't fully read. "Emily, what I'm going to show you will change many things. For you, for Lily, for my entire family." He sat down again, his green eyes, so similar to Lily's, shining with a mix of anxiety and determination. "I need you to answer me one question first, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Emily nodded, even though her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Is Daniel the father of Lily?" The direct question hit her like a slap. For a moment she considered lying, denying, creating some elaborate story to protect herself and her daughter. But there was something in Mark's expression, a mix of medical compassion and genuine family concern, that made her choose the truth. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes, he is." Mark closed his eyes and sighed deeply, as if a painful suspicion had finally been confirmed. When he opened them again, there were unshed tears at the corners. "Emily, I need to tell you something terrible, something that will explain a lot about my family's behavior in recent months." He took the envelope with slightly trembling hands. "After you came here, Lily's resemblance to our family left me disturbed, professionally disturbed." Emily felt the world start to spin around her. "What did you do, Mark?" "I collected genetic material from Lily during the appointment, a strand of hair that got caught in the bandage when I removed it. It was unethical. It was a violation of medical trust. But I needed to know the truth." The words came out in a confused, guilty flow. And I asked a friend at the lab to do a comparative DNA test. Comparative with whom? Emily asked, although she already knew the answer. With me, to confirm if Lily is my niece. Mark opened the envelope with trembling fingers and pulled out a letterhead sheet. Emily, the result confirms a 99.7% probability that Lily is my brother's daughter. Emily buried her face in her hands, feeling 4 years of carefully guarded secrets crumble like a sandcastle in the tide. Why did you do this? Why didn't you come to me sooner? Because I wanted to be sure, before involving you in what this will cause in my family. Mark stood up again, walking to the window that overlooked the hospital parking lot. Emily, you need to understand. My mom is desperate to save the family business. She has been obsessively investigating every former employee of the mansion, looking for anything she can use as leverage to secure investors or blackmail influential people. And now she will know about Lily. Worse than that. Mark turned to face her, his expression grave. She already suspects. She hired private investigators to dig into your entire life. It was she who orchestrated the tax investigation against your company. The revelation hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. What kind of woman does that? A woman who has seen the family fortune built over 5 generations and is now watching it crumble in a matter of months. A woman who believes the ends justify the means, especially when it comes to preserving the Thompson legacy. Mark returned to his chair, looking suddenly exhausted. Emily, my mom is capable of anything to protect our family, including trying to destroy yours to ensure that Lily is never legally recognized as a Thompson heir. Heir? Emily had never thought of her daughter in those terms. Lily was her princess, her reason for living, but she had never considered the legal implications of Daniel's paternity. Lily is the granddaughter of the matriarch of one of the most traditional families in the country, Emily. Even with the company in crisis, we still have properties, investments, assets worth hundreds of millions. If Lily is legally recognized as Daniel's daughter, she would have a right to the inheritance, Emily completed, finally understanding the magnitude of the situation. Exactly. And my mom would rather see your company destroyed and your reputation ruined than share the family fortune with, forgive me, those are her words, the bastard of a former maid. Emily felt the old anger awaken in her chest like a venomous snake. So that's it? She will try to destroy us to protect the family's money? She will try, but Emily? Mark leaned forward, his eyes shining with determination. I won't let that happen. Daniel won't either when he knows the truth. Daniel doesn't know? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first, understand your intentions. If you want paternity recognition, support, inheritance rights, Mark paused, or if you want to continue protecting Lily. Emily sat in silence for long minutes, processing the implications of all the revelations. Through the office window, she could see mothers accompanying their young children to the entrance of the hospital, normal families dealing with normal problems. Her life, which she had fought so hard to make stable and predictable, was about to turn into a battlefield. What do you think I should do? She finally asked. Honestly, I think you should find Daniel and tell him the truth before my mom makes this public in a way that harms Lily. Daniel has changed a lot in the last few months, Emily. The financial crisis, the public humiliation, it has humbled him in a way that might have made him more human. What if he doesn't believe me? What if he thinks I'm trying to pull a fast one now that I know about the company's financial troubles? Then you show him this. DNA test. Mark pushed the paper in her direction. And remind him that you built your own empire without ever asking a dime from the Thompson family. That should be proof enough that your intentions aren't financial. Emily took the paper and carefully folded it, putting it in her bag. Mark, Can I ask you something? Why are you helping me? You're literally betraying your own family." Mark smiled for the first time since the beginning of the conversation, a sad but genuine smile. "Because I'm a doctor before I'm a Thompson, because I believe Lily deserves to know her full story, and because—" he hesitated, "because maybe it's time for my family to learn that human value isn't measured in bank numbers." When Emily left the hospital that afternoon, she knew her life had changed irrevocably. The storm that was approaching wasn't just about tax investigations or social prejudices. It was about family, legacy, and how secrets from the past can explode in the present with devastating force. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Emily sat in her living room and picked up the phone. It was time for a conversation she had postponed for 4 years. It was time to tell Daniel Thompson that he was a father. But before she could dial the number, her phone rang. The name on the screen made her freeze. "Grace." "Emily, girl, you're in danger. Mrs. Thompson found out about Lily. She's coming after you. You're in a lot of danger." The war had officially begun. The rain pounded violently against the windows of Emily's apartment as she decided she could wait no longer. It was almost midnight on a stormy Friday in May, and Lily was sound asleep in her room, hugging the teddy bear that had been with her since she was a baby. Grace's urgent warning echoed in her mind like a constant alarm. The matriarch Thompson had discovered Lily and was coming after them. Emily walked to the living room window, watching the city lights flicker through the sheets of rain. Her reflection in the wet glass showed a 27-year-old woman who had aged decades in just a few hours. The last few days had been a whirlwind of revelations that had turned her carefully constructed life into an emotional minefield. Mark's DNA test was tucked away in her bag like a ticking time bomb. The tax investigation continued to threaten her business, and now the most powerful woman in New York's elite had declared war on her and her 3-year-old daughter. Emily felt like David facing Goliath, except Goliath, in this case, had lawyers, private investigators, and 50 years of experience in destroying lives that threatened the interests of the Thompson family. Her cell phone vibrated on the coffee table. A message from an unknown number made her blood run cold. "We know who you are. We know what you want. Stop now or suffer the consequences. Some lies cost too much to keep." Emily's hands trembled as she held the device. The threat was clear and direct, without any aristocratic pretenses or hypocritical politeness. Someone was trying to intimidate her into keeping the secret about Lily, and that someone had enough resources to make her life a living hell. Emily took a deep breath and made the decision that would change everything. She picked up the phone and dialed the number she had memorized but never used. "Hello?" Daniel's voice sounded sleepy and confused. "Emily, it's almost midnight. Is something wrong?" "Daniel, I need to talk to you now. It's urgent." "Now? Emily? Are you okay? Is Lily okay?" The genuine concern in his voice surprised her. "We're physically fine, but Daniel, there are things you need to know. Things about Lily, about us, about your family." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Daniel spoke again, his voice had changed. It was more alert, more serious. "Where do you want to talk?" "My place. I have documents to show you, and Lily is sleeping. I don't want to wake her." "Emily, if it's that urgent, are you sure you want to tell me at your place? I mean, alone?" The question revealed a consideration that Emily hadn't expected. He was concerned if she would feel safe having him over in the middle of the night. It was a care that the old Daniel would never have shown. "I'm sure. Daniel, what I'm going to tell you will change everything. Your life, my life, Lily's life. Are you sure you want to know?" "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "I'm on my way." 40 minutes later, Emily opened the door of her apartment to welcome Daniel Thompson for the first time. He was soaked from the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, wearing a brown leather jacket over a slightly sheer white shirt. He looked younger this way, less imposing, more human. "Sorry for the delay. The traffic is impossible with this rain," he said, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "No problem. Come in, I'll get you a towel." Emily's apartment was a perfect reflection of her personality, elegant yet cozy, decorated with quality furniture. The room was softly lit by gentle lamps that created an intimate atmosphere, very different from the cold and formal halls of the Thompson mansion. Daniel discreetly observed the photographs of Lily scattered across the shelves, spontaneous smiles captured in everyday moments that told the story of a happy and protected childhood. "Your apartment is beautiful," Daniel commented, accepting the towel that Emily offered him. "It feels like a real home." "Thank you. Would you like some coffee? I know it's late, but please, I think I'm going to need it." As Emily prepared the coffee in the open kitchen connected to the living room, Daniel continued to observe the details of the space. A small bookshelf was filled with children's books, some in English, others in Spanish, showing Emily's care for Lily's multicultural education. There were also some books on management and economics, indicating that she continued to study and improve professionally. "Emily," Daniel said when she returned with 2 cups of coffee, "before you tell me what's so urgent, I need to apologize. A real apology, not the empty ones I gave before." Emily sat in the armchair across from the sofa where Daniel had settled, maintaining a safe distance between them. "Apologize for what?" "For everything. For the way I treated you when you worked from home. For how I reacted when For how I fired you. For the arrogant way I treated you that day at the hotel." The words came out with difficulty, as if he wasn't used to admitting mistakes. "I was a coward and a jerk, and you deserved much better." Emily studied his face in silence for long seconds. There was sincerity in his green eyes, a vulnerability she had never seen before. "Daniel, I accept your apology, but what I'm about to tell you will test much more than your ability to apologize." "I'm ready." Emily took her bag and carefully pulled out the DNA test that Mark had given her. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the paper, and she realized this would be one of those moments that would divide her life into before and after. "Daniel, Lily is your daughter." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge that, once crossed, would not allow for a return. Daniel stood completely still for several seconds, his expression going through a succession of emotions: shock, denial, confusion, and finally, a painful understanding. My daughter," he whispered, as if testing the sound of the words in his own voice. "That New Year's Eve, 4 years ago, you were drinking because you had fought with your fiancée. I stayed late cleaning up after the party. You found me in the living room, crying because I had discovered my mom was sick and I didn't have money for the treatment." Emily paused, remembering the mutual vulnerability that had created a dangerous intimacy that distant night. "I remember," Daniel said softly, his eyes fixed on the floor. "We talked. You told me about your family, about your dreams. I told you about the pressure from my family, about how I felt trapped in a life I hadn't chosen, and one thing led to another, and one thing led to another," he repeated, finally lifting his eyes to meet hers. "Emily, when you told me you were pregnant, you said I was lying. You said it was a scam. You called me a gold digger and fired me on the spot, threatening to sue me if I spread lies about the Thompson family." Daniel closed his eyes, as if the words were physical blows. "Oh my God, Emily. I destroyed everything. I destroyed you. I destroyed my own daughter before she was even born." Emily extended the DNA test to him. Your brother Mark collected genetic material from Lily when she got hurt at the playground. He suspected the resemblance and requested a comparative test. Daniel took the paper with visibly trembling hands. His eyes quickly scanned the technical information until he found the result, confirming a 99.7% probability of kinship between Lily Johnson and the Thompson family. "She is my daughter," he repeated, now with a certainty that felt both liberating and terrifying. "Lily is my daughter, and I lost 3 years of her life." "Daniel! 3 years, Emily. 3 years of first words, first steps, first questions about the world. 3 years of you raising our daughter alone, while I—" He ran his hands through his wet hair, a gesture of despair that Emily recognized from the hardest moments of the past. "You can't change the past," Emily said softly. "The question now is what you will do with this information." Daniel abruptly stood up and walked to the window overlooking Lily's room. The door was slightly open, and he could see the small outline of the girl sleeping under a pink blanket. Can I see her? Just for a minute?" Emily hesitated. Letting Daniel see Lily sleeping felt like an irreversible step toward involving him definitively in the girl's life. But there was something in the way he had asked, with a humbled humility that completely contrasted with his past arrogance, that made her agree. They both quietly approached the bedroom door. Lily was lying on her side, a tiny hand resting on the pillow, her brown hair spread like a halo around her angelic face. Even in sleep, the resemblance to Daniel was striking. The same face shape, the same determined chin, the same expressive eyebrows. "She's beautiful," Daniel whispered, his voice choked. With emotions he was clearly struggling to control. "She's absolutely perfect. She's smart, brave, funny. She asks about everything, wants to understand how the world works. She's generous with other kids, but she also knows how to stand up for herself when necessary." Emily spoke softly, with maternal pride evident in every word. "Like me when I was a kid. I don't know. You never told me what you were like as a child." Daniel watched Lily for a few more minutes before, as he stepped away from the door and returned to the living room, he sat on the sofa again. But now he seemed like a completely different man, as if discovering he was a father had stripped away some invisible armor he had carried for years. "Emily, what do you want from me? Legal recognition? Child support? Visitation rights?" The question, though practical, sounded too cold for the moment. Emily realized that Daniel was trying to process the situation rationally, but the reality of fatherhood was far more complex than legal issues. "I don't want anything, Daniel. Lily and I have always managed just fine on our own. But she deserves to have a father. She deserves to know her family. Your family." Emily hesitated before telling him about the threats and investigations orchestrated by his own mother. "Daniel, there are other things you need to know about your family and what they are capable of doing to keep secrets buried." And then Emily told him everything: Grace's involvement, the private investigations, the tax harassment, the veiled threats. With each revelation, Daniel's face grew darker, his jaw tightening with rising anger. "My mother did this?" he asked incredulously. "Is she trying to destroy you for what? To protect money that doesn't even exist anymore?" "To protect what remains of the family fortune. Lily is her legal heir, Daniel. If this becomes public, screw the family fortune." The curse came out with a violence that made Emily flinch. "Emily, I won't let my mother hurt you or Lily. Not again." "And how are you going to stop her? Your own company is in ruins. You have no political or social influence to—" "I have other things," Daniel interrupted her, his eyes shining with a determination she hadn't seen before. "I have information about family businesses that my mother would prefer to keep secret. I have documents that could ruin the Montenegro reputation forever. You would blackmail your own family? To protect my daughter? To protect the woman who raised my daughter alone while I was being an idiot? Yes, Emily, I would do that and much more. The declaration hung between them, laden with promises and implicit threats. Emily realized that Daniel had changed more profoundly than she had imagined, not just in his attitude toward her, but in his own understanding of loyalty, family, and responsibility. Daniel, I need to think about all of this. I need to consider what is best for Lily. Of course, but Emily... He stood up to leave, but paused at the door. No matter what you decide about me having a role in her life, I won't let my family harm you two. That's a promise I can make. After Daniel left, Emily stayed awake until dawn, alternating between checking on Lily as she slept and looking out the window at the city slowly waking up. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets clean and shining under the golden light of the rising sun. For the first time in 4 years, she wasn't facing her problems alone. For the first time, Lily had a father who seemed genuinely willing to fight for her, but Emily had learned that promises made in the heat of emotions didn't always withstand the cold light of reality. Time would tell if Daniel Thompson was truly capable of becoming the man his daughter deserved to have as a father. For now, she would have to trust and prepare for the battle that was surely coming. The first ray of June sunshine broke through the scattered clouds when Emily woke to the persistent sound of the doorbell. It was 7 in the morning, and a Monday that promised to be decisive, and Lily was still sound asleep in her room, hugging the teddy bear she had received for her last birthday. Emily wrapped herself in her navy blue cotton robe and walked to the door, peeking through the peephole with the caution that had become routine since the threats of the previous week. On the other side was Mark Thompson, holding a brown leather briefcase and wearing a grave expression that made Emily's stomach tighten. At his feet, 2 suitcases suggested an urgency she couldn't comprehend. "Mark? What's going on?" "Emily, I need to..." "Come in. It's about Lily. It's about all of us." He looked nervously over his shoulder as if fearing he was being watched. "My mother has accelerated her plans. You need to leave New York City. Today." Emily opened the door fully, allowing Mark to enter. He looked like he hadn't slept. His green eyes were red from fatigue, his unshaven beard gave him an unusually disheveled appearance, and his hands trembled slightly as he placed the briefcase on the coffee table. "What are you talking about? Leave New York City? Mark, I have a business to run, Lily. Has school..." "Emily, my mother has hired family law specialists. She is filing for custody of Lily this morning." The words came out like bullets fired, direct and devastating. "She claims that you are an unfit mother, that you raised Lily in a morally questionable environment, that you are hiding information about paternity for financial gain." "That's ridiculous." Emily felt her anger explode in her chest like molten lava. "Lily is my daughter. I am a model mother." "I know that, you know that, but my mother has the resources to make any accusation seem true in court." Mark opened the briefcase and began pulling out photocopied documents. "Look at this. False reports from social workers, statements from former employees who were bribed to lie about your behavior, even manipulated photographs suggesting neglect." Emily grabbed the papers with trembling hands. The pages contained a distorted and malicious version of her life. Allegations that she left Lily alone for long periods, that she brought unknown men home, that she used the child to blackmail wealthy families. It was such an elaborate and convincing fiction that she herself was impressed by the level of detail. "This is madness, Mark. No judge would believe..." "Mom knows the right judges, Emily, the ones who owe political favors to the Thompson family, the ones who can be influenced by strategic donations for their future campaigns." Mark stood up and walked to the window, watching the morning hustle of the street. "She's not bluffing. There's a whole legal army ready to make your life a nightmare until you voluntarily give up custody or accept a deal that keeps Lily away from the Thompson family forever. And Daniel, does he know about this? Daniel is trying to stop it, but... Mark hesitated, as if the next words were particularly painful. My mom has compromising information about business deals he made in the past. Questionable contracts, irregular payments, relationships with corrupt politicians. If he tries to publicly protect you, she will use that information to destroy any chance he has of rebuilding his career. Emily sat heavily on the sofa, feeling the world crumble around her once again. So, I'm alone in this. As always. No. Mark moved closer to her, his eyes shining with determination. I brought a solution. It's not ideal, but it might work. What kind of solution? Mark crouched down and opened one of the suitcases he had brought, revealing neatly folded clothes and some of Lily's toys. I have a medical clinic in a small town in New Jersey. A little place where I treat underprivileged children 3 times a week. You can stay there for a few months until this situation calms down. Mark, I can't just disappear. My company, my employees, my whole life is here. Your company can be managed remotely for a few months. Your employees understand family emergencies. But Lily... He paused, significantly. Lily only has one mom. And if you lose custody of her to my mom, you may never get her back. The weight of reality began to settle in Emily's chest like molten lead. She looked toward the room where Lily was still sleeping, unaware of the storm approaching her small, sheltered life. Mom! Lily's sleepy voice echoed down the hallway. Who are you talking to? With Dr. Mark, sweetheart. Do you remember him? The doctor who took care of your knee? Lily appeared in the living room wearing her pink unicorn pajama set, her brown hair tousled from sleep, and her green eyes still half closed. She waved shyly at Mark before running into Emily's arms. Dr. Mark, my knee is all better, look. Lily enthusiastically demonstrated how she could bend her leg without pain, her morning joy brutally contrasting with the gravity of the adult situation. That's great, Lily. You're a very brave girl. Mark crouched down to her level, his professional tone masking the anguish he felt. Lily, would you like to see the countryside? Real horses, cows, plant flowers? Real horses? Lily's eyes widened with excitement. Mom, can we see horses? Emily exchanged a meaningful glance with Mark before responding. Maybe we can take a trip, sweetheart. An adventure in the countryside for a few weeks. An adventure! Lily clapped her hands, instantly transforming the forced escape into an exciting excursion. Can I take my bear? Of course, love. As Lily ran back to her room to pack her toys for the adventure, Mark approached Emily with a serious expression. Emily, I need to tell you one more thing. Daniel doesn't know I'm helping you leave the city. He's trying to resolve this by confronting my mom directly, but... Mark sighed. He could interpret this as kidnapping, as an attempt to take Lily away from him just when he found out. He's a father. So you're risking your relationship with your own brother to protect us? I'm doing what's right, as a doctor, as Lily's uncle, as a human being. Mark pulled a card from his wallet and handed it to Emily. This is the address of the clinic in New Jersey. I have a small house in the back where you can stay. It's simple, but it's safe. Emily studied the card for a few seconds before making the hardest decision of her life. How much time do we have? The lawsuit will be filed at 9 in the morning. That gives us 2 hours for you to get out of the city before the search warrants are issued. Search warrants? My mom will claim that you're trying to run away with Lily to blackmail the family. The police will have authorization to search for you at bus stations, airports, relatives' homes. Mark checked the watch on his wrist. That's why we'll leave by car, on back roads. It's slower, but safer. Emily stood up and walked to Lily's room, watching the girl who was now packing all her stuffed animals into a small pink backpack. "Sweetheart, we need to get ready quickly for our adventure, okay? We'll only take the most important things. And school and my friends? We'll be back to see them all soon. For now, it will just be a special trip, just the two of us." Lily accepted the explanation with the absolute trust that children place in their mothers, but Emily knew that sooner or later she would have to explain why they had fled New York City like criminals when they hadn't committed any crime other than existing. An hour later, Emily was locking the door to her apartment with a painful sense of déjà vu. Once again, she was being forced to flee because of the Thompson family. Once again, she had to start over in an unfamiliar place. But this time, at least, she was not completely alone. "Emily," Mark said as he loaded the luggage into the trunk of his car, "before we go, do you want to leave a message for Daniel? Any explanation?" Emily thought for a moment. Part of her wanted to explain, wanted him to know that she wasn't trying to take Lily away from him, just protect her. But another part, the part that still carried scars from 4 years ago, whispered that Thompson men always chose family over justice when the pressure was mounting. "Tell him that when he is ready to be the father that Lily deserves, regardless of what his family thinks about it, he knows how to find me." As the car drove through the still deserted streets of New York City, Lily dozed in the back seat, hugging her teddy bear and dreaming of horses. Emily gazed out the window at the city she was leaving behind, wondering if she would ever truly be free from the tentacles of the Thompson influence. On the other side of the city, Daniel Thompson awoke unaware that his daughter was being taken away from him once again. The war that his own family had declared was just beginning. The discovery hit like a devastating hurricane on Tuesday morning. Daniel Thompson was in his temporary office, a much smaller and more modest space than his former grand office, when Sarah, Emily's personal assistant, called with a voice choked with tears. "Mr. Daniel, it's Sarah, Emily's assistant. I didn't know who else to turn to. Emily and Lily have disappeared." Daniel felt the world spin around him. "What do you mean, disappeared?" "They left home early yesterday morning with suitcases, saying they were going on a trip. They haven't returned home, haven't answered the phone, haven't replied to messages. And this morning," Sarah sobbed, "this morning a team of social workers showed up at the company office with a court order to investigate Lily's living conditions." "What kind of court order?" "A request for temporary custody. Someone claimed that Emily is an unfit mother and that Lily is in a risky situation." Sarah's voice dropped lower, as if she feared being overheard. "Mr. Daniel, the documents have your family's name on them. Your mother is trying to take Lily away from Emily." Daniel hung up the phone and stood still for several seconds, processing the information that confirmed his worst fears. His mother had truly declared war against Emily and Lily, his own granddaughter. The woman who raised him to value family above all else was destroying the only family that truly mattered to him now. 15 minutes later, Daniel burst through the double mahogany doors leading to the main office of Thompson Construction. Elizabeth Thompson was sitting behind an imposing desk, her perfectly styled grey hair in an elegant bun, wearing a dark grey suit that made her look more like a general preparing for battle than a 63-year-old grandmother. "Mum, where is Lily?" Elizabeth calmly looked up from the documents she was signing, her expression revealing no surprise at her son's abrupt entrance. "Daniel, dear, I'm glad you came. We need to talk about this unpleasant situation." "Where is my daughter?" Daniel repeated, each word laden with a controlled fury that made the assistants in the room discreetly withdraw. "Your daughter is safe, away from the harmful influence of a woman who clearly lacks the moral and financial means to raise her properly. Elizabeth stood up, revealing her imposing stature. She had always been a tall woman, and at 63 she maintained the aristocratic posture that intimidated even powerful men. Daniel, you need to understand, this person is trying to use the child to blackmail our family. Emily never asked for a dime from us. She built her own empire without our help. Exactly why she is dangerous. Elizabeth walked to the panoramic window that offered a view of the New York City skyline, her slender but firm hands crossed behind her back. Ambitious women like her are capable of anything to get what they want. And what she wants is to destroy our family, to take revenge for the humiliation she suffered years ago. The humiliation that I caused her, Daniel corrected, stepping closer to his mother with determined strides. I unjustly fired her. I refused to acknowledge my own daughter. I destroyed their lives out of pride and cowardice. Elizabeth turned to face him, her green eyes, so similar to Lily's, shining with a calculated coldness. And now you want to make up for it by handing over half the family fortune to a former housekeeper? Daniel, use your head. This family has built this fortune over 5 generations. I will not allow it to be squandered because of a moment of weakness on your part. Lily is your granddaughter. Lily is a mistake that can be corrected. The words came out with a cruelty that made Daniel involuntarily step back. We can ensure she has a good education, a comfortable life, without compromising the family's interests. There are excellent boarding schools in Europe, competent tutors. You are talking about separating a 3-year-old child from her. Mother, I'm talking about saving our family from complete ruin. Elizabeth returned to her desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a black leather folder. Daniel, do you think your former housekeeper built a successful business purely on merit? Do you think she secured million-dollar contracts just through competence? Daniel watched his mother open the folder and spread photographs across the desk. They were images of Emily at business meetings, corporate dinners, elite social events. In many of them, she was seen conversing with powerful men, politicians, businessmen, investors. Emily Johnson slept with at least 5 of the most influential men in this city to secure the contracts that built her company, Elizabeth declared with surgical coldness. We have documents, witnesses, hotel records to prove it. She is, in essence, a high-class escort using her beauty to gain business advantages. That's a lie! Daniel swept the photographs off the table with a violent motion, scattering them across the floor. You are inventing lies to justify the unjustifiable. Dear son, Elizabeth sighed, with the exaggerated patience of someone dealing with a stubborn child. Why do you think a former housekeeper can secure contracts that century-old companies compete for? Why do important clients choose a small company run by a woman without higher education or family connections? The words planted a poisonous seed of doubt in Daniel's heart. She picked up the luggage, much lighter now after months of simple living in the countryside, and followed Lily towards the boarding gate. The girl had visibly grown during their time in New Jersey, not just physically, but in maturity and independence. She had learned to ride a bike on dirt roads, helped Mark plant vegetables in the clinic's garden, and made friends with kids who had never seen a shopping mall, but knew the names of all the wildflowers. Mom, is Daddy going to miss us? Very much, sweetheart. But he promised he would visit us in New York City, remember? During the flight, while Lily dozed off against her shoulder, Emily reflected on everything that had happened in the past few months. News came through Mark, who made sure to keep her informed about every development in the case. Daniel had lost everything: money, properties, social standing, but he had gained something much more valuable, the opportunity to start over as the person he truly wanted to be. He had found a job as a project manager at a mid-sized construction company specializing in affordable housing. The salary was a fraction of what he used to make, but the job gave him the satisfaction that decades of privilege had never provided. He was building homes for families who truly needed them, not mansions for millionaires who already had more than they could use. The apartment where he now lived was in Central Park, 15 minutes away from Emily's old address. It was a small, simple space with 2 bedrooms, an open living area with the kitchen, and a small balcony where he had planted some flowers that he tended to religiously every morning before work. Attention passengers, we are beginning our landing procedure at Congonhas Airport. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Lily woke up with the announcement, rubbing her little eyes and looking out the window at the approaching city. "Mom, we're home." "We're home, sweetheart." Outside the airport, Daniel Thompson was waiting by a used car he had bought with his first savings from the new job. He was as nervous as a teenager on a first date, constantly checking the time, and running his hands through his now longer hair, less executive and more human. It had been Mark who organized the reunion, after weeks of phone conversations among the 3 adults to establish clear rules on how to proceed. Emily had agreed to a supervised meeting in the presence of Mark so that Lily could gradually get to know the father she had never met. When he saw Emily and Lily coming out of the terminal, Daniel felt his heart race in a way he hadn't experienced in months. Lily was taller, more developed, with longer hair tied in 2, braids adorned with colorful ribbons. She wore a yellow dress with a sunflower print and a denim jacket, carrying a small backpack on her back and firmly holding her mom's hand. "Lily," Emily said softly, kneeling to her daughter's height. "Do you remember the man we met at the Japanese festival, the one with eyes just like yours?" Lily studied Daniel with the seriousness of a little investigator, examining his face as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. "He still has eyes just like mine." "Yes, he still does. And do you know why?" "Why?" Emily took a deep breath, preparing for the most important conversation of their lives. "Because he is your daddy, sweetheart." Lily processed the information in silence for a few seconds, alternating her gaze between Emily and Daniel. There was no trauma or confusion in her expression, just natural curiosity and a bit of shyness. "Hi, Daddy," she finally said, with the absolute simplicity that only children can demonstrate in monumental moments. Daniel knelt down as well, meeting Lily's height, his green eyes shining with tears he couldn't control. "Hi, Lily. What a beautiful girl you've become. You know my name? I know many things about you. I know you like horses, that you are very brave, that you know how to ride a bike, and that you have a special teddy bear." Lily smiled, impressed with his knowledge. "How do you know all this?" "Because daddies always know about their daughters, even when they are far away." During the drive from the airport to Central Park, in Daniel's simple car, very different from the luxury vehicles Lily was used to seeing in movies about rich people, the girl asked dozens of questions with the thirst for knowledge characteristic of her age. "Why didn't you come to see me before?" "Because I was learning how to be a good daddy. It takes time." "And now have you learned?" Daniel exchanged a quick glance with Emily through the rearview mirror before responding. "I'm still learning, but now I'm ready to learn alongside you." Daniel's apartment was exactly as Emily had imagined, modest but impeccably clean and organized. The walls were white and adorned with plants he clearly cared for. There was a small bookshelf with books on architecture and gardening, a comfortable grey sofa, and a dining table for 4. But what caught Lily's attention was the second bedroom, which Daniel had specially transformed for her. There was a twin bed with pink sheets, a low dresser painted white, shelves at her height filled with children's books, and a play area with a colourful rug and cushions scattered on the floor. "This is your room, Lily, for when you want to sleep here." Lily explored the space with the enthusiasm of an archaeologist discovering an ancient treasure. Every toy, every book, every detail had been carefully chosen by Daniel based on the information Mark had shared about the girl's likes and preferences. "Mom, look! There's a book about unicorns!" Lily excitedly showed an illustrated book she found on the shelf. "Very nice, sweetheart." During lunch, a simple dish of pasta with sauce. Daniel had prepared a tomato sauce, following a recipe he learned on YouTube. Lily began to relax in her father's presence. She talked about the horses she had met in the countryside, about the friends she had made at her rural school, about the flowers she had planted with Dr. Mark. "And you, Daddy, what do you do at work?" "I build homes for people who need a place to live." "Like our house?" "Similar, yes, so that other families can be happy like us." Emily watched the interaction between father and daughter with mixed feelings. It was impossible to deny the natural chemistry between them. Lily responded to Daniel's presence with an ease that surprised even herself. But Emily also knew that family relationships were built over years of small daily gestures, not just good intentions. "Daniel," Emily said, when Lily got distracted playing with a puzzle he had bought for her, "we need to establish some clear rules." "I completely agree. Lily will continue living with me. You can visit her twice a week initially, always giving notice in advance. On weekends she can spend an afternoon here, but she'll go home to sleep." "That sounds perfect." "And Daniel, if you disappoint her, if you promise things you can't keep, if you bring instability to her life in any way—" Emily paused significantly. "I won't hesitate to cut off that access." Daniel nodded gravely. "Emily, I've destroyed many things in my life out of pride and immaturity. But I won't destroy my relationship with Lily. She is the most important thing that has ever happened." To me, when it was time to leave, Lily hugged her father spontaneously, making Daniel's heart break and mend simultaneously. "Daddy, when will I see you again?" "How about Thursday? We can go to the park, and you can teach me how to ride a bike like the horses taught you not to be afraid." Lily laughed at the crazy comparison. "Horses don't teach you how to ride a bike." "Oh, don't they? Then how did you become so brave?" On the way back home, to the same apartment that Emily had left 6 months ago, but which now felt different, filled with new possibilities, Lily asked the question Emily knew would eventually come. "Mom, are we a real family now?" Emily stopped the car at the traffic light and turned to look at her daughter. "We've always been a real family, sweetheart. It's just that now our family has gotten a little bigger." "I like that it got bigger." "Me too, love. Me too." That night, after putting Lily to bed, a ritual that had become even more precious after months of uncertainty, Emily sat on her balcony with a glass of red wine, contemplating the city that sparkled like a sky of urban stars. Her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. "Thank you for giving me this chance. I promise I won't waste it. Good night to both of you." Emily typed a simple reply. "Good night, Daniel. See you Thursday." It wasn't a fairy tale ending with a wedding and honeymoon. It was something much better than that. It was the beginning of a real family, built on foundations of mutual respect, maturity, and the unconditional love for a 4-year-old girl who had transformed them all into better people. On the other side of the city, Daniel Thompson slept in his simple bed, dreaming for the first time in years of a future worth living.